I was left for dead. That's how my journey in entrepreneurship started. I left the corporate world and my finance and MBA degrees behind me to share my story. Welcome to That Entrepreneur Show, where resilience meets hustle. Let's build and learn from our guest now.
Out of my research, we were looking at the startup years 1 through 5. And of course, the SBA has put out that 18% of businesses fail in year 1, 50% are gone in year 5. And it's partly because of what you just said, Vincent, wearing a lot of hats. I understand the startup game because I went through it. We do wear a lot of hats, and it sometimes is hard to justify hiring help. But here's the problem that I discovered in that whole research is that
I'm fired up. She's fired up. We have an awesome chat here on That Entrepreneur Show. Trudy wears many hats, and now the reachologist, right? Reachology. She's got a way to make it affordable for brands to get on television. She just finished her doctorate. So we've got a lot to uncover, and there's going to be a lot of lessons in there. Trudy, thanks for stopping by That Entrepreneur Show.
Thanks, Vincent, for having me.
Of course, and a big shout out to Carlton. If you're viewing on now or later, we got a great friend here, and this is That Entrepreneur Show. Thank you for tuning in to the #1 podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week to keep this show a top 2.5% global series. And today we have another all-star coming your way. I teased it in the beginning. A lot of things she's got her hands in. She's got new accomplishments, but you know how the game works. We're going back to the beginning, Trudy. Why did you want to go in this field of entrepreneurship?
So I knew I would not make it as a good employee. I knew I take instructions well as long as you don't micromanage me. And so just tell me what you need and let me go. And that's not the usual experience in jobs, of which I've had very few because of that. Then when I got married and my husband and I started talking about children, I'm like, dude, if I start popping out them babies, again, if my kid needs to stay home from school or whatever, I am not going to receive somebody telling me I have to show up to that job. So I said, we're going to figure this thing out. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And that's what it was. And it's been like that. I've had 2 jobs in my entire life and I'm 59 years old.
I love, what were those jobs? Where were they?
Well, I was a C-suite executive at Air Jamaica. So I went up through the ranks and I became a C-suite executive in marketing at Air Jamaica. I ran the frequent flyer program and we had the Jazz and Blues Festival. That was my project. And then for a short time, I worked at LifeLink, which is a transplant organ transplant organization. So let's leave that one alone. And those were my jobs.
I love it. Well, everyone, you got to start somewhere. I'm sure you've used some of those skills you've learned in your own journey. But once you left LifeLink, let's talk about first company right off the ground. I want to hear about it.
So the first company was Health Coach Plus. Believe it or not, I was in the fitness space. I was an instructor trainer for fitness as well. And I had a studio and I had lots of corporate contracts. And then when the 2008 recession came, fitness was something a lot of people cut. I mean, you can go for a walk around your neighborhood. You don't have to come to the gym and use a treadmill. So when that happened, I went into a severe depression and I put on a lot of weight. And I didn't even care because I had lost that business and I was like over it. And then after the recession was over and I started to come out of it, started to come out of that depression, everything, the Lord started to show me some stuff. So I started to look at that whole money space. And so I got into profitable stewardship. So I was looking at what the Bible had to say about money. And I started doing that. And so I went to TV to share that message. And I started the television channel to share my content. And it went, Vincent, the Lord, I got very, very sick. I got sick towards the end of COVID. I was in the hospital during the COVID period. And thank God I never picked up the COVID, even though I was in the hospital with all those COVID patients. But I was there for a while and then I was down for a year. I had to have rehab and all that to get back to walking. So while I was on my back, I said I'd go back to school. So while I'm recuperating and doing school, they had this TV thing going, but I wasn't in the mindset to make content. Also, my finances got hit because I wasn't able to work. So 1 or 2 people started saying, hey, Trudy, would you have me on your show? And I was like, That's a thought to repurpose the show into packaging other people's content, right? And so I put it out there, and I want to thank Yonel for that word, packaging people's content, and I would amplify it and put. So that's what I started to do while I was sick. It was easier for me to interview someone about what they were doing than to really be in the frame to make the content for myself. And that's what I've done, and it's been great. It has been an amazing journey to become a knowledge worker, sharing other people's voices, packaging those voices and amplifying it and sharing it to the world. So that's where we're at. So I'm done with school and I've written a couple of books, and we're getting into the next phase.
Well, let's not breeze past that too quick. Wrote a couple books. I know you got one nearby. Let's hold it up. Let's talk about it.
This is my latest, Reachology. Reachology also happens to be a trademark I just freshly got from the government. So Reachology is a word I coined because measuring influential reach should be a science, not an art. And this book is built on the 5 pillars of what it takes to build influential reach. It was also part of my doctoral research. And that has morphed into a whole program, because in the space we're in, Vincent, when we bring people on and we share their voices and everything, at the end of the day, I don't believe they come to shows like ours for an ego stroke. I believe they come with the expectation and hope of that amplified reach to a brand new audience. And so I really went into what does it take to do that? And that was where that book evolved.
Now that you're done with the book, you've done a few, you said, what's a piece of writing advice you wish you knew before you started that first book?
Well, my very first book took many, many years to write. And then I bought a writing program called How to Write a Book in 14 Days. That unlocked so much for me, and it has been a game changer. AI today has made a lot things easier. But back in the day, a lot of people thought, and I think people still think, it is difficult to write a book and it takes a long time to write a book. That no longer has to be true.
Of course, if you want to write the Harry Potter length book, you can, but a lot of studies are showing with attention spans and receptibility that some books shorter, as long as they have the value in it, of course. And that's something Trudy focuses on a lot. And we're about to dive into her work with that new trademark, Reachology, in just a moment. But I don't want to just brush past some of the great things you're doing. You're helping brands get on television for an affordable way. Let's show love to one of these shows you love working with.
Okay, so one of the shows, and these guys are all on LinkedIn. So I want to give a shout out to Rocky Romanella, to Stephen Howard, and to Dr. Peter James. And they were all on one of my leadership conversations. And actually, their voices were very instrumental, even to helping my doctoral research. And that show is on PSI TV. By the way, Vincent, PSI TV has a channel presence on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Vita TV. But I also repurposed it to social. So on social, that episode on YouTube is very close to 9,000 views and a whole bunch of comments. So it did very well. So shout out to those guys right off LinkedIn that were participants in that episode. Yeah.
Yeah, something I'll need to take some notes is, the SEO on YouTube. We were talking about behind the scenes. One of the ways we differentiate at Coming Alive is we're a podcast company offering podcast services, where the majority are social media companies now offering podcasting with no experienced podcasters, which kills me, because would you bring your car to a body shop when they don't have experience fixing cars? I don't think so. Right? You wouldn't want to just go on TV out of the blue. You'll hit up an expert like Trudy. We'll find out her contact information at the end. But before we get there, let's dive into some Reachology talk. You've got the new trademark, and I know you're all in on this effort now.
I do want to say something to what you just said, Vincent. I'm going to say I get also a lot of people on my show who are asking me for shows like yours. Where else can we go, Trudy? Because a lot of podcasts do exist and a lot of them are free. But free, if they haven't monetized in some way, it doesn't have to be on the show. But if they have monetized, because they're not going to be there for very long, they're not going to be able to promote the show. They're not going to up their mastery at the game. So I'm happy to recommend your show as a next place for people to go, because a lot of my guests are like, where else can we go to find good shows? So I want to applaud you on that. So you asked me about the trademark.
Well, I know that's something you're all in on, and I really appreciate those kinds words. I mean, the show it sits strictly right. You got a 30-minute Calendly appointment with you and I get you in and out. But the norm or the votes I do on the polls is for 30 to 60-minute shows. But when I go do my research on these shows, a lot in that time frame, they BS for 5 or 10 minutes in the beginning. They're doing weak introductions. They're just hanging out and they're not getting to it. Like with me, my listeners' time is very limited and valuable, and so is my guests. So we're hopping right in. And I know you do a lot of great work on your show. So everyone, I'm going to flip the switch there and make sure you stick around to the end because we're going to get her contact info, her shows, her books, all that good stuff. Reachology, why'd you want to trademark it? Why are you going all in on this now that your TV business is floating and flourishing?
So Reachology, as I said, is because we need to be able to measure that influential reach. A lot of people are big fish in small ponds. They know they're influential at their church, at their school, at their organization. But the problem is they are not influential beyond that group. And there's no real tangible way to measure that. You can look at social following, but what I realize in research is that there are social media influencers that have attention, but they don't really have much to say. This is why they're usually brand ambassadors for people like us, because we have something to say, but they have the attention. And so it's all fine and well that you have attention, but is that enough? So Reachology is going to look at a person's credentials, their experience, their publication, yes, their social following, and their digital footprint to come together with a comprehensive score. This is for thought leaders. This is not for the person who wants to gain attention and will do pranks and dances. That's not who this is for. And so as I got into that level of work, because really people like myself, authors, entrepreneurs, business owners, people who are making an impact in the world. Well, we want to measure that impact beyond just a few videos here and there. How can we really measure that? And that's why I started to do that. And then it was like, how do we measure that? So I came up with a proprietary score. But once a score is created, it always hanging fruit for people to jump on right away to build and close those gaps and build a reach. And so I got the word trademarked. So there we are. I offer those services beyond the TV or parent to build. It is only a part of it.
Well, congratulations on getting all of that work done, putting it into the world, manifesting it, because I know this is a really exciting chapter for you. You got your degree done again. You're moving on to new things. And of course, now you've mastered the system on getting people on TV. Now you said, let me add to the value I can give to people. So I absolutely love that. Everyone, you can extend and grow under your umbrella, serving them in multiple ways. You're a great proof of that and inspiration to that. But I always like to also touch base on what advice could you give an early stage founder who is starting today or has just started? And of course, they finally hit that overwhelming, I'm wearing 50 hats. What do I do?
So out of my research, we were looking at the startup years 1 through 5. And of course, the SBA has put out that 18% of businesses fail in year 1, 50% are gone in year 5. And it's partly because of what you just said, Vincent, wearing a lot of hats. I understand the startup game because I went through it. We do wear a lot of hats, and it sometimes is hard to justify hiring help. But here's the problem that I discovered in that whole research is that if you're a competent accountant, let's use the accountant, which is easy. You're a competent accountant, you're a CPA, whatever. Okay, great. I've worked at Price Waterhouse and I'm going to start my own business. You have mega confidence because you are competent at what you do. You know your game. But then you open a business and it fails.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Well, the thing is, you're good at what you do, but you're not good at bringing in leads. You're not good at delegating assignment. You're not good at customer service. So there are so many elements to running a successful business that could fail. And today it's easier than ever with virtual assistants, with remote and freelance gig workers, with AI tools. Today, the founder really has fewer excuses for those competence gaps. They really, really do. So my word of advice is recognize your brilliance in your lane and hire to your weakness. Or if you really want to be in another space, then invest in leadership development, invest in what it's going to take for you to learn that new skill in that new domain. I certainly didn't wake up or was born knowing how to video edit, but I love the video space. So anything that's video catches my attention. But I hate the minuscule. And so I need my virtual assistant to check my emails to keep me on task because there are those minutia things, but she loves it. She's a detailed person. And so this is what I would say to the founders.
And you're so right. My career, I just celebrated 10 years in entrepreneurship. I didn't start really making money until about 8 years. And what did I do? The change, I let go finally. I finally had an assistant come on. Back then, it was just a few emails. Now she's working 40 hours a month, no problem. But then you start delegating everything else. And now I am not in the business, right? I have a full team. We're down to 12 people. I was up to 16, but we didn't need all those hires. There's some people I learned who want to work harder. They're more invested. And when you find those people, you have to take care of them because they're taking care of you. And now, like you said, I am supplementing my weaknesses, which was a lot of the graphic and a lot of the things, right? The social media. Now we've got some people helping. But before I let her go, I've got some stuff up here on the screen. If you're catching the video later or watching us live, be sure to email if you like what you say and support at TrudyBeerman.com or head to PSI TV network.com. Trudy, I ask all the guests this. Which entrepreneur throughout history who you have not met, dead or alive, that you would choose to pick their brain?
Steve Jobs. And the thing is, I actually met his family. Yeah. So my son graduated from Stanford with his son. They were both in the same class in the same year. So I met his wife and his son. His son is Reed Jobs. The very year that he passed, I binge watch everything Steve Jobs puts out. So I've used AI to hear his voice and to answer questions in his voice. So it's been pretty trippy.
I absolutely love that. Well, I also love how this episode went, like I knew it would, Trudy. Thank you so much for giving me some time. Again, big shout out to Carlton, our mutual friend. If you don't know Carlton Meadows, he is another entrepreneur you need to follow. But Trudy is here. We connected on LinkedIn. You can find her at her email, support at TrudyBeerman.com, PSITVnetwork.com. Anywhere else we can find you online, but I also want you to share, where can we find your pod? Where can we find your books?
So PSI TV is TV. So if you have an Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Vita TV, please look and search for and download the PSI TV app there. I think that's enough because I don't want to overwhelm them with the
You can find her there, find her on LinkedIn, search her name. As long as you're not spamming, I'm sure you might have a chance of getting in touch with her, but she does have her guard up like I do, because on LinkedIn, it's a shame of how it's going down the toilet, but that's a pod for another day. Only positivity. My name is Vincent A. Lancey. This is That Entrepreneur Show. Be sure to subscribe to stay current with our community of entrepreneurs, and be sure to show Trudy love on her platforms. If you think you're ready to go to TV or you want to learn more about the Reachology and all she's doing, reach out to her. She is here to help. You can learn more about me on Google, typing in Vincent A. Lancey. And from there, we're signing off, both of us in entrepreneurship mode, ready to crush the day. Trudy, thank you so much.